Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to our audience today. It's another beautiful day, Sunday. We're here again with another beautiful event. My name is Taha. I will be your host today. And without any further ado, today's event, we'll be focusing on a very important topic that is very near and dear to all of us. This event is being hosted by AKM Institute, which was founded by Alima Ustaze Taha, where the focus initially was intended to empower and educate women, and which further branched off as the focus broadened to the men, towards families, and most importantly, to the leaders of tomorrow, our youth. So with that, a little bit about myself. I have basically been in North America for the better part of my second half of my life, of about 16, 17 years. And I've been exposed to a lot of the different challenges that we've had for the youth. And with that being said, alhamdulillah, I've been blessed to help the youth, primarily within AKM Institute as a youth leader, managing a lot of the projects, helping the youth basically build a level of confidence where they can become leaders of tomorrow. Now, with that being said, today's topic, which touches upon the challenges that today's youth faces. We have a personality that needs no introduction, someone that has over 3 decades of activism, third generation educator, an activist, a coach, a mentor, things that are very important to he has worked with many presidents, with many prime ministers, government officials around the world. And not just that, mashallah, he has been published over 24 books, to say the least. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you Shaykh Jahangir Mahmud. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Shaykh. How are you doing? Shaykh, you are on mute, I'm guessing.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
How are you doing today, Shaykh?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. How are you, Taha?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah al-khair for blessing us with your presence. It is a very important topic, and I must say that I am super, super excited. I hope I can call myself part of the youth to have such a topic that is so near and dear to many of us. Topic that we really want to get a lot of answers, a lot of things that we're challenged with, and we long to surface that and get responses from such great lights as yours.
Well, I certainly hope I live up to some of your expectations, and let's move forward.
Definitely. So just to paint a picture of today's session, today's program. So we'll jump around some core topics that touch upon our identity, the different types of challenges, questions more or less where we ask, can we ask this? Can we not ask this? Where do we basically move forward with? So as we start, Sheikh, do you have anything on top of mind, do you think, that we might be able to break the ice with?
Well, I like to challenge my viewers and listeners to ask me a question that can make me angry. As I like to do that in the beginning, right? If I was there physically, I would announce a prize also for it if I could, and I would be willing to give a prize to the person who can ask me a question and make me angry. I've not lost this thing for the last 12 years.
Sorry, Sheikh, I think we lost you for a brief second due to some latency issue. We will try to find out exactly what we missed. Just bear with us for a brief second. In a world where everything is going digital, obviously there are slight challenges and hiccups when it comes to the internet connections. Just bear with us for a brief second. So as the Sheikh was saying, for those, just a quick repeat as we get Sheikh back on, that he would like to be challenged, to be asked a question that can get him upset. Because those type of questions are very thought-provoking. On the contrary, someone may ask, well, why would I ask such a question to a Sheikh that would get him upset? I don't want to upset somebody when I'm trying to ask a question. But this is not to necessarily upset someone, but it's to really get the critical thinking flowing, to really try to understand if I was to ask such a question, I must have thought really deeply about it. So I can share a brief story as we get Sheikh back online. Growing up, there was always a struggle. What can I ask? What can I not ask? Is that the right thing to do? Am I going to fall out of the fold of Islam? Am I, is this a question that is coming from my akhal? Is this a question that is coming from shaitan? So being someone that grew up for the initial 15 years of his life in Middle East and Pakistan, primarily in Abu Dhabi, going back and forth, that world was very different to what we have in the West. So the second half of my life happened to be in Toronto, Canada. And with that being said, it was always a conflict. And it was always trying to understand, what can I really ask? Because our youth, like we mentioned before, they are the future of tomorrow. They are the leaders of tomorrow. However, we want the generations to, we need to focus on the now to, reap the benefits of tomorrow. So that is somewhat of what the Sheikh had asked, and I would really, really challenge and request everyone to think about those questions and bring those forward, inshallah. So let's see if we have been able to get the connection issue sorted, so we can start back with this question. Alaikum Sheikh, are you back? Okay, I'll ask the team behind the scenes to please try to see how we can bring Sheikh Jahangir back. Yes, Sheikh, I think I heard you. No, Sheikh, we're still having some issues. Just bear with us for a second, everyone. We are. Okay, so as we're waiting, I'll share a brief story as we try to bring Sheikh Jahangir back. So Sheikh is joining us from the other side of the world, but I do want to. Oh, Sheikh is back. Perfect, awesome. Sheikh, I'll let you continue the train of thought.
Thank you. Like I was saying, that the reason I say these words to especially younger people, because maybe I grew up many years, perhaps before you grew up, Taha, but I face similar challenges, especially
And I think we've left. Okay, no worries. We will try to figure out what's happening behind the scene. Sheikh was mentioning some of his challenges. We are having some of our own technical challenges. Can I also get our audience to let us know, can you guys hear me properly? Or is there issues on both ends? Okay. So as we wait, I'll have to fill in with, I guess, some of my bit impromptu challenges as well, as the topic is about the youth challenges, and I've spent about 17 years within North America with my challenges. So some of the themes that come to mind that I can share as I've been through high school, been through university, had the opportunities of going through the different MSAs, different sporting events, different friend groups, all being exposed to all walks of lives, which we definitely do. Most of the youth will basically get their fair share of that, because we do live in a multicultural society where it's less about a big set of people from a certain geographical location. We have, mashallah, a very healthy mean of different people we're working with. So it really comes down to what kind of culture do we come from, and what kind of culture do we have here. So those are also some of the challenges. I think we have Sheikh back, so I'm going to add him back. Okay. Sheikh, I was just filling in the time between. We had lost you with some of my little impromptu challenges, but please, you were mentioning where we last left you. Was your challenges?
Like I was saying that a lot of things growing up in Pakistan, I didn't understand. I was told to do things, and I was told to do them. And the reason why I was to do them is because
I know. So, Sheikh, we are having audio issues again. So Sheikh Jahangir is having a little bit audio issues. No problems. Inshallah, we will try to resolve that as soon as I can. I do apologize to our audience. We are really trying to bring you a smooth experience, but certain issues are a bit out of our hand. We do have a great personality with us, so we will try to cherish every moment that we are able to get Sheikh Jahangir back, inshallah. So just do bear with us. Sheikh Saad was pretty much mentioning that even though sometimes there's a disconnect with the youth when we do look up to sheikhs, saying, oh, well, how can that sheikh relate to our struggles? We often forget that, sheikhs are human as well. They basically had the transition over the years, and they've been exposed. And mashallah, that is the reason why, Sheikh Jahangir is such a gem, because he has had that experience. And I'll, inshallah, bring him back. Sheikh.
Yes, can you hear me, Taha?
Yes, loud and clear, Sheikh.
Chalo, let's try to manage without my picture. I'll send pictures if you want afterwards to our viewers.
Definitely. Please continue.
So I was saying that, you probably have heard this from your elders. Often a statement that is said that they would say, "Maine ye baal dhoop mein safed nahi kiye." I haven't whitened my hair in the sun. It's been implying that it's been years and years of experience and hard work and knowledge that is somehow manifested in my white, hair on my head, on my face. And I would wonder that if my elders have not whitened this hair in the sun only, is there somebody out there who's whitening the hair in the sun only? There ought to be somebody out there. And I had these silly, perhaps, questions even at times. And I look back now and I like to laugh at myself for asking some questions which were silly. But now, being a teacher and a trainer for over 28 years, I feel that there is no such thing as silly questions, only silly answers. And I hope I don't upset people, but if I think if a young man or young woman has a question and does not understand the answer, it is the person who is answering who should be responsible for that lack of understanding and not the questioner. So this is an issue. And I also feel that a lot of young people, especially Western educated people, have a different mode of talking or a different syntax in which they will address their elders. For example, it would be a informal and nice thing to call somebody in the West with their first name. But that would be that would be not acceptable in say Pakistan or India to ask to talk to somebody and use their first name for this. But I think that what Taha you can be in a position to do, and I hope I can be a supporter of that, is to bridge this gap between the antique, between the classical, between the orthodox and the modern. So I hope today's show is a starting point for that, inshallah.
Inshallah, no, 100%. I couldn't have said it better myself. So we to use that as a segue to our question. One of the challenges that the youth have these days, and I can only add to it from experience, Sheikh, is the issue of Muslim identity. I am a
Hmm,
Muslim and I'm living in the West. My parents
hmm,
brought me up a certain way. They were brought a certain way. But
hmm,
there are multiple disconnects that are
hmm,
happening at all different places, from how the parents were raised, the values
hmm,
that they had, then they came to the West. And in this case, since I'm in Canada, I can use like Canadian example. And then they were
hmm,
doing the best they can, and their efforts were because they love their kids and they want the best for their kids. But then there
hmm,
is a societal generation and societal disconnect that happens. So that Muslim identity becomes such a core topic, and it's an over encompassing. Obviously there's multiple smaller things, but what what can you share with our audiences, especially the youth, when it comes to things about what is my Muslim identity? Where can I start? And what can I use as a baseline to understand my Muslim identity in the West when my parents, per se, may be from another part of the world and I'm, growing up in the West? So the East versus West Muslim identity issue, to say the least.
one of the I think problematic things that the modern world has given us is somehow an insistence the the assumption that everything which is old is probably wrong and no longer it's valid. Somehow it's wrong because since it's been old, like an old computer or because an old phone, it's obsolete. Therefore, it need not be addressed or even looked at. This is a problem which is perhaps inherent in many societies of the modern societies today. But as far the identity is concerned, all Muslims around the world, in over 60 or 70 plus nationalities now, minimum, I'm not talking about those Muslims which are born in a Muslim country or society, and you add on to that the Muslims who come from other societies or countries, the identity is very much imbued with the culture of that particular society or country. So if I am a Pakistani, if I have a certain kind of dress code which is based on Islamic values and principles, and yet, of course, it has been colored by my elders in a particular way. So if I come from Morocco, for example, and if from Marrakesh, the brother or sister, they will dress up in a certain way. It will be based on Islamic principles handed down from generations. But in those handing down of generations, it's going to color itself with the local culture and the local traditions. Now, I'll give you a very solid example that for example, in the subcontinent, where I live, if I were to wear, say, a pink shirt or a pink cap, it would be considered very, non-gender. It would be against my gender to wear it. And the ulama or the scholar might say to me that this is the mushabiha of the women. You're trying to become a woman by wearing a pink cap, or a pink shirt, or a pink trouser. But if I were to go to the Far East, these colors would be worn by men and not by women. It would be the other way around. I've been to the Far East several times, and I've seen them wear very colorful, bright colors. The men wear bright colors, the women wear not so bright colors, which is the exact opposite of my own country. And if I were to go there, I would be the odd man out. So I think the Muslim identity, wherever you come from if you come from Canada, you come from the US, you come from Morocco, the identity will be always colored by the local tradition, the clothes they wear, and the culture, and of course the weather itself also. Then I think in the winter, I've in the winter in Canada when it's snowing, I think everybody looks the same. They're trying their best to avoid the icy cutting wind. They're trying their best to they look the same more or less. Maybe somebody is wearing a very expensive jacket and somebody wearing a less expensive jacket, but they look the same in the snow. So what I think is the challenge of the youngsters living in the second generation immigrants, maybe the local people who have converted to Islam, they need to understand that the people that they are Muslims, they need to derive their identity from the Islamic principles, from that, and develop their own identity in their own culture and in their own way and in the way they like it. Islam does not specifically tell you a dress code or a certain kind of trouser or a certain kind of a shirt or a certain kind of a cap. It tells you a principle, and it gives you that as per your culture. Otherwise, it would not be a universal religion if it was not able to encompass everybody, if we were not able to make room for everyone in our cultures. In fact, if he were not to be the multicultural society. And this, regarding religion, has happened everywhere. If you look at the pictures, I don't want to upset people who are listening to this, but look at the pictures that people have of Jesus. You see, he's Caucasian in Europe. He's Mediterranean in the Mediterranean Sea. He's Negro in Africa. He's Latin American in South America, because that happens to every culture. And Islam, in this manner, is defining the overlying principles of life, and dress and food. Food is important. I like to have all kinds of food and all kinds of places. The Quran does not specify it to you. It says, eat what is halal, eat what is tayyib, eat what is good for you. And that's it. It does not say you don't eat a burger, or you eat a curry, or you eat a barbecue. It says this is the principle. Do what you like in your culture, in your country. So, summing it up, the Muslim identity, I think that these youngsters are trying to imitate an identity and a culture which is not really valid anymore for the area and the era they live in. I think Muslim youngsters, they need to establish their own connection with the Quran, with the Sunnah, and now give this a new culture which we have not seen before. I might not like it personally, but I cannot object, because that's their culture. That's how they live. And they are the ones who will carry the torch of Islam to the future. I don't want them to go back in time and live in my village. I want them to live in Mississauga. I want them to live in San Francisco and establish their identity. And last but not the least, the true Muslim identity established by the Quran and Sunnah is of a person who believes in the oneness of Allah, in the finality of prophethood, in the principles of justice, in the principles of fairness for all, in the principles of honesty, in the life of charity for others, in the manner of living. It becomes a magnet for people around him to become the nucleus of good in everywhere he or she goes. That is actually our true Muslim identity. And once we've established that as human beings, individuals, and societies living and communities in the West, I think from there the sky's the limit. We can bring all our brothers and sisters into this fold if we establish where the actual identity lies.
Jazakallah khair. That really, is a beautiful way to, tie up a lot of different questions that comes to my mind, and questions that I wanted to ask. I think a beautiful segue to this would be, how can we create, and you basically perhaps answered 80% of this. So I'll connect a sub question to my question would be, how can we set a baseline of, the Shariat? We hear this a lot, especially as the youth, is like, you have to understand the Shariat of the country. And often we hear, oh, the Sharia that's in Pakistan, the Sharia that's in Saudi Arabia, and that becomes the baseline. So the youth living in the West, in North America, what is the baseline of Shariat and society? And you've touched upon a lot of different aspects of how it can be implemented, but where can we start? And another point to that, and you can choose to answer how you see fit, is really comes down to control. You need to have stability of whatever the environment we have, to a certain degree, where you're able to keep moving forward, you're able to keep growing, and build a path out. So before we can go forward, we need to basically look at our current state. Where are we at before we can project where our future state is? And that's where parents look at the youth and say, I'm bringing my child into an environment. I have certain dreams and aspirations for my child, for them to achieve. And as they achieve, I want to provide some guidance. So it's more of a symbiotic relation between the parents and the youth. So to go back to that initial question is, what is, in your eyes, a baseline of sort between Shariat and society? How would you try to define and explain that?
Yeah, that's a very wonderful question, and I'm really happy to be part of this conversation. And I think that I would love to have this more of this. I can look forward to this time remaining, and I look forward to many questions that come from the audiences as well. Uh, the first part of the question is about the baseline, the second about the parents. The baseline for Muslims throughout history, the very first day, has been two things. قال تعالى وقال رسول الله. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, what He taught, and what the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught. This is the baseline. Now, for hundreds of years, the fuqaha, the scholars, the scholars over the years have, for their time period and sometimes for times to come, interpreted, made easier and made simpler and simpler and simpler the Sharia for us. The baseline, again, Quran and Sunnah, and yet the fiqh al-Islami, the jurisprudence, the concept for 14 centuries is that the fuqaha, the jurists, they have been making it simpler and simpler for us. But all those simplifications or explanations and interpretations are not timeless. Some are timeless, and some can be always reinterpreted if need be. So the rule of the thumb here is, and I don't want to get into a debate with people on the Sharia, but the rule of the thumb always has been that changing principles for changing circumstances and permanent principles for permanent circumstances. Right? So what we need to understand is that this is a baseline, and it's also important for us not to ignore the 14 centuries of the hard work put in by the scholars. Nevertheless, if at any given time we need to uplift or upgrade, that's what I like to call that we like sometimes need software upgrades all the time. And some software upgrades they slow us down, and some software upgrades they make us things do better, things do become better. So that's what they need to do. That's the baseline. I hope that answers the first part of your question.
Definitely.
The second part is that when parents live, the first generation immigrants' parents they live, uh, they both need to understand. I think that kids today are far, far smarter than I was at their age. At least I'll admit to that much in my own person. I look at my own children, I look at my friends' children and my students, and I am so happy to see that these people, they're 17, they're 18, they're 12, they're 15, they're 25, and they're far smarter. And they're embarrassingly far smarter than I was when I was their age. Not just they know more about technology or more about the internet, but they know, mashallah, so much. And I sometimes feel that I, as a person, as a parent, and as an educator, myself feel at times in a bind that am I really able to exploit the treasures that I find in those young people, both men and women, young men and women. But these smart young people, they need to understand that your parents can actually really bring you up the way they've been brought up. Very few people in this world are ever going to be able to break that chain or move outside those, what you like to call, color outside the lines. There are very
Hmm.
few people who are going to do that. We are actually be able to even understand the concept. So what the young people need to do is, instead of, I think, crying over or cribbing about the parents' control issues, I think what they need to do is benefit what they can from them. Try to get over this obstacle. Try to get over this, this tightness in the hearts, that I don't know why, but my mom can't see me happy, or my dad doesn't really want to be enjoy my life, and he brings in God and the soul into everything. You know, Understand this, young people. Your parents mean well, and that's a lot. That's a lot. That means really a lot when somebody means well for you, right? You may not be able to communicate that as well as you would like, then I would give that margin to them. But what you need to do is also learn to appreciate them. And I want our audience to listen very carefully to the sentence and the words I'm about to say. You learn not just with your parents, but with everyone you meet in your life. Learn to appreciate people for what they are and not what you would like them to be.
Okay, that's. I hope the audience. This has been a very commonly asked question. So Jazakallah khair. It makes me really happy to hear that, because it's been something that I felt I was bouncing around trying to understand, and it has always been more of a gray area for me. So Jazakallah khair for asking. Which leads us to the second question, and I'm seeing our audience asking this question. The theme that it really comes up is Islam is a religion we follow. Culture is a huge aspect of where we come from. But then the thing is, how do we embody these values that Islam brings while not going too far from culture, but at the same time encompassing everything around them so they can become pious intellectuals as they move forward. And when I say intellectuals, I want the audience to understand one thing: is there's this. My mentors have always told me there's a difference between having a lot of education but not having enough wisdom, because wisdom enables you to actually utilize that wisdom towards good, because having too much wisdom can also lead you the opposite direction. So Chef, some of the questions we're getting is that the importance of this Islamic education and the schooling system, and how do we get this, all the goodness that these parents have into the kids. But then I want to add another element to it: is the parents have the best intentions in mind for the kids. They want them to
Mm,
grow to be, obviously contributing members of society, at the same time, be following the path of Rasulullah Sallallahu the best they can in the generation, but then also understanding the aspect of control.
mm,
So I'm taking the questions we're getting from the audience, but also adding some challenges that I have seen. The
mm,
fine line between giving them the education they need in a healthy manner that's collaborative, and understanding the element of control, because some control is necessary in the upbringing to kind of put rules and guidelines in place so they don't deviate.
mm.
So where do you think this healthy balance stays for the parents, as well as for the youth, in moving forward and becoming these contributing members of society?
Well, first of all, I think that sometimes children around the world, in all cultures, tend to be a little too sensitive and touchy about the control word. I think now sometimes this people who have graduated from the University of Google in psychology. These people, I like to tell a joke in my trainings when I'm training teachers, and I tell them that I was in school like more than 35 years ago or 40 years ago. And at that time, there were actually principles and there were actually rules on how to beat the children, how to punish them physically, how to how to beat them with a stick, what stick should be there. We had actually these handbooks available. I still have some of them, and I got the full brunt of it. I was a naughty boy, and I was getting my share of those canings, but I never got traumatized because of those punishments. There was no trauma in my childhood because of them. And I asked, why? Because trauma was not invented yet. So since it's been invented, now everybody's getting trauma. Everybody's learned this pseudo psychology, and everybody's trying to blame somebody else for their problems, right? So if children do feel at times suffocated, remember two things. First of all, most of all, parents, they love you. They want the best for you. Try to understand that. They may not say it or do it in the way you might like, and sometimes they could be wrong, but they mean well. That should never leave the equation. And the second thing is, and it's very important to remember that no matter what, end of the day, the value of experience cannot be completely ignored. The value of experience should never be completely ignored. If they have, if they are, maybe they are, be from, especially from the Indian cultures, people come with a lot of spices. I say we eat too many spices, and then it makes us angry all the time, and we get intolerant with those spices. But the youngsters also need to appreciate that there's a line between a difference between discipline and between control. What we have been brought up as youngsters, and I think a lot of parents are out there listening will bear with me and will like this thing. What I'm saying is important that discipline. There is no life and no success without discipline. If you listen to any living or dead motivational speaker in the world, he's going to talk about how discipline frees you. It makes you a free person. Instead of being enslaved to your desires or enslaved to your body, it frees you into being a follower of higher principles in your daily life. And I think you need to understand this, that this is not always about control. A lot of times it's about the disciplines built up by the parents, like you're in the army. If you go to the stock exchange, any stock exchange in the world, they have rules, they have a discipline. If you go to any armed forces, if you go to any good school, if you go to any normal school, they have a discipline. They've got rules. Rules are not out there to control you always. Rules are there to make life easier and simpler and better for you. And I think young people need to understand that. And I hope that today we have added something to their value to what they were understanding previously.
Jazakallah, Sheikh. So for our youth, just a summary of that is understanding the value of experience that our parents bring, because there's a clear difference between what discipline and control. And if you want to achieve a higher, a high, achieve anything higher
Station.
in life, discipline. Exactly. Yes. For lack of my words, you do need discipline in life. Without discipline, you won't be able to achieve uh, what many have before you. There's aspirations that you have. Discipline needs to be in place. So jazakallah for highlighting that, because it's been a common question. And I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm looking at a lot of different questions, which would gets me to another point is a common thing is you have to do as you're told. Don't ask why. Do as you're told. And I'm sure, Sheikh, in our previous conversations, we touched upon that mentality of it. But I want to ask the exact same thing as if you could just elaborate a little bit on that particular mentality of just silently do as you're told without asking questions. That not all parents do that, but there is a thing because the parents will obviously incorporate elements into their teaching what they have been taught and that
Yeah.
they have seen worked. but it may have worked in a different setting, in a different environment, in a different part of the world, but may not necessarily be something that works. And just a side point to that, and I do want to say this in the most utmost respectful manner, that I advise, when I see certain things happening over and again to the youth, at least, I say, listen, the definition of insanity is trying to do the exact same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So with that being said, Sheikh, the question I want to bring back us forward to is the mentality of, just simply do as you're told, and failing to understand how can you build the empathy and the level of understanding between the youth and the parents, because the parents do bring a lot of experience.
Well, that's true. And what I would like to say to parents out there, and this is not a criticism, and this what I'm going to say, I don't want my young men and women to use that in the conversation. But I would like the parents to remember that if people or youngsters do not understand what we are saying, it's perhaps more of our fault than their fault. Because if we have experience and if we have more, if we claim to have more knowledge and we claim to know the best, then it is also part of knowing that to be able to make the other person understand and to make the other person understand in a nice way. And what I would advise, I would give to parents in this regard is talk to your children as if you're talking to a newly reverted Muslim. That would be the very good approach towards this. Do not talk to them as if you're the sergeant at arms and they are the new cadets in your military academy. You expect them to understand everything you say, perhaps that out of love and out of sincerity. There's no doubt about the sincerity. But sometimes sincerity is not enough. And the method is also important. In fact, in this dunya, all people will know is your method. The sincerity will come only in Akhirah. Only Allah knows the real status of people's hearts. So what I would ask parents listening out there that this is a tip. Talk to them as if you just learned that this man, for example, this young man Taha Ansari, just became Muslim yesterday, and he's asking or he's questioning, whatever you're saying. How are you going to explain in order for that person not to go back into the old ways? That's a very good approach, and it's worked. To be honest, it's worked with my own children. It's worked with many people over here. Once change the approach and not doing the same thing again and again the same way, do it in a new way. Try this and get back to me, parents, please.
Definitely, I already see the parents, and I'm seeing the audience saying, definitely we'll try this method. Uh, so an excellent approach, an excellent advice. Look forward to our future sessions where perhaps we can hear some feedback from the audience on how they've implemented this, and what has worked, also what hasn't worked, because oftentimes we don't talk about what doesn't work, and highlighting what doesn't work is monumental to help us see what we should avoid moving forward. So, Sheikh, I want to circle back to a point that you mentioned about a lot of the youth, or just in general, people graduating from Sheikh Google, and
Mhm.
a point that you mentioned when we chatted earlier was about Mullah versus Mister. I
Mm.
absolutely fell in love with that particular statement. The question really comes is like, how do we leverage the there's so much information on the tip of our finger, and now everyone thinks that they are a mufti. They can, or they can give ijazas and stuff like it has a snap of their finger.
Mm.
Now we're plagued with this beauty of having information at our tips, but also becoming a curse where we're going to Sheikh Google and leveraging. How can the youth, so a two-part question, how can the youth leverage and have this respect for sheikhs like yourself who have been through the struggles of coming over here and providing this information, as well as the second part of the question is how can parents empower and also enlighten their kids to understand that there is a long process, just like going to middle school and high school and university to better understand a discipline before you can really give an advice. Just like a doctor you can't just give a medical advice without being a doctor, because it obviously there's a cause and effect. It can be very detrimental. But people don't often look at simply going in Google, finding something, and then going with it. So where's that balance where we can help the youth understand the difference between Sheikh Google and an actual Sheikh, and the parents basically being armed more or less with tools where they can help their kids understand. Don't go on Google and understand how to pray namaz, because XYZ can be misguiding you. Go to the right sources. So how to get the youth and the parents to navigate through the darkness that we have, that was meant to be a source of guidance, aka Sheikh Google.
Well, first of all, when you spoke of trusting people like myself, I would not recommend that. Seriously, don't trust people like me. That would not be something I would recommend to anybody. So that's a disagreement we already have. The second thing is, your part of the answers in your question. When you said that a lots of or ocean, not no, oceans of information are at our fingertips, that's exactly what they are. That's information. It is not knowledge. It needs to be processed. It needs to be screened. It needs to be evaluated, and then it has to be understood. And then, at some point, it can be applied in our lives. Right? This is not as simple, because the information can work. You can go on Google. Like I went on Google and I wanted to know which is the nicest. I was traveling, so which is the halal restaurant around me nearby, and that information was enough for me. And it said that you have to check for the certification from so and so authority, and I can just go. That this is enough for me. But if I were to know the very guiding principles of my creed, of my aqidah, that I will not rely just for information. Then I will need to go deeper than that. I'm not going to go to Google and perform. I would ask any young man or woman, not to, would they go to Google and start or watch a video on YouTube and then perform surgery on themselves or their parents or their wives or spouses? They would never do that, because that's not enough, right? There are things which are accessible and which are easy to access, and that's a very good advantage. So let's not turn the internet into a disadvantage. Let's keep it the advantage. So if you want to study masla, you want to see some ruling on some for fatwa, go to the internet, look at the website, but ask people who have been teaching fatwa for years and years. Ask anybody you trust, because I cannot trust something colorful and interface on the screen. And let me, without going into too many details, one of the fitna in the fitna, that the age of trials, the Prophet ﷺ, he said to his companions that a time will come when a man or a woman will lie, and that lie, that fabrication, shall be written all over the skies. And I interpret the hadith for the internet now. You can say anything you want. If you're good at the rise, what do they call those words, those choicey words, that trending words, and I can put that lie into millions of people can start believing it, or even perhaps partially believing it. It will be a lie. So just like you would not let somebody, a graduate of YouTube Medical College, uh, to perform surgery on you or prescribe medicine for you, how can you be so careless? I'm sorry if somebody doesn't like these words. I apologize in advance. But how could you be so careless that something which is aqidah, which is creed, which is ibadah, which is worship, which is going to decide just not the next 20, 40 years of your life, but decide till the end and beyond of time? How can you just leave that to a click on anything? That would not be something I would recommend. And I would like the youngsters to free think this attitude. And I'm sure there's smart people listening out there. They don't understand what I'm trying to say, inshallah.
Jazakallah. So a lot of different a lot of beautiful topics that we've came forward with. So as we as we come closer to the hour mark, Sheikh, I wanted to ask you One question that I feel, and maybe wrong, but I strongly feel, as a starting point would be often the youth fall under analysis paralysis. There's so much information out there. Where do I start from? How do I start? Just kind of having, there's this thing in coaching that comes from just a quick share. It comes from like the martial arts dojo called shuhari. So shu is you simply just go with the flow, what you're told, and you're basically just going with whatever the sensei or the master is telling you. The ha is where you understand the basics, the fundamentals, and then you're able to adjust a little bit. And then the re is where you can then use your own akhal and say, okay, this is a particular thing. Can I actually use it in this particular scenario? So that particular element is an age-old thing that people have masters, but to get there, it takes a long journey. So often people fall under analysis paralysis with a lot of fitna out there. So what would you say would be a good starting point for our youth based on the topics we've discussed today about the different types of control, the Muslim identity, how we set the baseline for the Sharia society, the building the empathy between parents and the youth, doing things in moderation, understanding the mentality. All that are great topics. But what would you say is the starting point for our youth as they can embark on this journey?
Well, first of all, I would ask them and everyone regarding what starting point is. I would say start anywhere, at least start. You know, I remember this lovely sentence I heard from the black activist Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King, and he said that come by plane or come by train. If you can't come on a car, and you run, and if you cannot run, you walk. If you can't walk, you crawl. But you come to this Million Man March. So the starting point is that you decide to start. That will be the starting point. Anywhere you can, if you have access to the internet, you have access to a seminary, you have access to a sheikh, you have to a ustaza, wherever you can start, just start it. That will bring you many unfolding things. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that before somebody wants to more clarification. Because in reality, you are actually starting a journey towards Allah, not towards an alim or alima or a madrasa or any book for that matter. Even the Quran, study of the Quran is actually a journey towards Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised us through His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam that whomsoever shall take a step towards me, I shall take 10 steps towards them. And who shall come towards me walking, I shall come towards him running. So I believe you start anywhere. Once you start, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will intervene, as in personal intervention. And He is the one to guide you. So don't have too much faith in people or the information. Have faith in Allah. Ask Him, make dua to Him. And He is the one. Should take one step, He will take 10 steps. He will make sure in your sincerity, in your faith, it is He who is the actual muhaymin, the protector of faith. So leave some things to Him also, but take the first step, inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakallah, Shaykh. Last question I want to ask you for our today, which really feels extremely short. I wish we had more time. The question that I have is about the company that we keep ourselves around. I recall a saying by Maulana Rumi is surround yourself with those that flame your fire, and that really resonated with me over the years in my youth. So obviously the first thing is to make the intention to start somewhere. But the common question that really comes about from parents that ask and have asked me numerous times is the company of my kids, how important is that? And the kids seem to feel, well, we live in Canada, I go to work, I go to school, multi different people and whatnot. But what do you mean? Like, I can have my company, whoever I want to. It could be people of all walks of life. How important is it to focus on the type of company you have in a healthy manner? Not saying that you don't assimilate, you cut off people, you're only with the Muslims, the people who think the same way. I'm not mentioning that, but for parents to basically help their kids understand the importance of the right type of company. If you can shed just a few words on that aspect, with what your thoughts are on that.
What I think they need to do is, and also before I answer the question, I would also ask you, because we had a little late start, we had a little technical issues in the beginning. If you could take a few more minutes to answer the live question that you've got once we are done with this, that would
Sure.
be nice. That would be nice. Well, the right company, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he made it very brief. He gave a very beautiful analogy, a very beautiful, I don't know, maybe you call it an analogy over there. So he made a very good example that having a bad company is like being in a friend, having a blacksmith for a friend. So you sit with the blacksmith, you're going to either burn your clothes, you're going to, blacken your face with the soot and the fire and the smoke, or at least as long as you're going to be there, you're going to be smelling all the smoke and everything from there. And having a good company is like having a perfume seller for a friend. So either you're going to buy something from him, you're going to see him, or he might give you a gift of some perfume, or at least as long as you're there, it'll be smelling nice. So I think that the youth have to make a choice, given the fact that nobody has unlimited time, and to spend their time wisely. Because, like they say, and it's true that a band is really known, you eventually become the company you keep. You eventually become like them. You take habits from them. You take directions from them. You take thoughts from them. They affect you. So I would ask all the young people and men and women out there, and everybody out there, to make sure they choose the company wisely, company which helps them not just in dunya but also akhirah. Now, both of these might not be found as one person, but at least there should be a benefit for that. And even if it's just a benefit of dunya, it should not be something which is going to be troublesome in akhirah. So keep in mind, the healthy company gives you healthy environment, and a healthy environment is needed for a person to become mentally healthy and spiritually healthy and physically healthy.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. That 100% is something in my uh, years, I'd say the decade and a half that I spent here. That was definitely a deciding factor. Like a healthy mind allows you to think in a critical manner, allows you to navigate through the challenges that come through. And the company that you're around, something that I was always told by my mentors was OQP, only quality people. And I was always told, if you practice that, you will notice that you will surpass any expectation you ever had for yourself. And then that also helps you, fine tune your skill sets of becoming a leader. Don't be a manager, be a leader. A leader helps create other leaders. A manager just manages people. And I really took those to heart. So jazakallah for that. With that question, let's see what our audience, as you mentioned, Sheikh, if they have any questions. Now is the time. Do
Okay,
Yes.
we have a question here from the Sundar Rahman. Please ask how important it is to send uh, to kids to Islamic schools, to Mufaq Foundation, to send to public school and teach them Islam values. Well, no matter what school you send your children to, you will still be responsible for their value system. So just don't think it's going to be over if they go to an Islamic school. What I've understood from this question is that perhaps the Islamic school does not have good academics, so there's a compromise that has to be done over there in many schools in the West. So do not compromise on that. Pressurize your school, you pay them a fee. Pressurize your school to do the academics. But end of the day, if I have a choice between the two, I would go with for the value system rather than the academics only. So a bit of both is more important than just one thing, because alone at home, I don't think it will be easy to establish a good value system in your child. How can parents inculcate Islamic beliefs in a way that they love the Islamic values, whether they are in front of the parents or not? It's two things. How much love is expressed by parents is that builds the bond with your children, and how well they're able to explain things they're doing. Remember, young parents, these two things. For some, it might be too late, actually. But for young parents, like this lady has written down, the sister Hira, young parents need to understand that children will follow who they love. For the last so many years, we have developed a love for actors and actresses in our children's lives by telling them how nice this guy is, how what the hero is he, and how this is. So develop those heroes, become your children's first heroes, and tell them about how good their grandparents are or were, how good a line of Muslim community they come from, how great and how honest, how truthful, how beloved the community of Muslims is. That will They will follow what they love. They will stay where they love. They might follow for a while something attractive. They might follow to a place which sounds, attracts them in a worldly way, but they will stay forever where they love. That should be the crux of everything. Now, people going to say to me that all parents love their kids, and I absolutely agree with that. But all parents do not express it the way it ought to be expressed. I'll give you an example. Your young boy or your young daughter comes to you and says to you, I want to go to a concert, and I want to go to school prom, I want to go to this place or that place, I want to go to this place, and you don't want them to go. So what generally parents like myself perhaps like to do is we lash out. How dare you even think of going there? So you don't care about your parents' name, your own reputation. Have you no sense? And you start to attack them, and they react by saying that they don't understand me. They don't want me to be happy. They don't want to enjoy my life. Now, dear parents, what you're actually saying is, what you actually mean is that my son or daughter, I cannot stand the fact that you will go into an environment that's not good for you. I cannot bear the fact that you're going to go to a place that you might fall into bad ways. I cannot fathom you in a situation which is dangerous for your dunya and akhirah. So, if that's what you mean by your harsh words, then use these words. Use the words which you actually mean. A child is not going to be able to decipher your never-ending love of behind those, words which he or she perceives as damaging to their, self-respect. So do that to make sure that the words that you use are words that they value and understand in their language. Learn their language. Don't expect them to learn your language. What should we add in our lives strongly to make them right? Yes, I think we've covered that more or less. How to make them observe prayers, make them love you, and make them the way you love prayers. If they love you, they're going to be following what you do as a young child or boy will do. Um,
Chef, there's one about, how about forcing kids for offering prayers and picking them for Jummah while at school if they don't like it?
Try to understand, Sister Rubina, try to understand why they don't like it. Try to tell yourself and teach yourself and why, because there's always a why involved. If someone likes something or someone dislikes something, is this the fact that there's a reason behind that. So why do not they like to company for Juma? Maybe the people there who are not, nice to them. The people there who push over the young children, in the in the rows of the prayers. Try to find out the reason. Ask them the reason, and deal with that reason somehow as best as you can. And if you do that, I'm sure you will overcome this hurdle, inshallah.
Chef, there's another one. It's how to explain this to kids that who is good company for them. Uh, we're here. They teach not to consider anyone doing haram as if they are doing haram.
I think that if a parent is able to develop a good relationship with their children, if the parent is able to inculcate a strong self identity in the child, you don't really have to give them very long explanations for things. You know, Again, the core of any mentoring or parenting is the love expressed, and that love is expressed in the language that the other understands to be love. I'll repeat that sentence. When you want to give an emotional deposit to someone, when you want to express your love, it has to be expressed in the words and the manner that the under understands as love.
Mm.
So try to learn the language that they understand to be love from you. They are not going to cut open your heart and be able to see how what undying love you have for them. It's they're going to need to be shown it. My dad used to say, "Don't say you love me. You show me." So you have to show what you're doing. Because in the previous generations, it was a given thing that, of course, parents love you. Of course, they're always right. Of course, they mean well. Yes, and they still do. Perhaps they still do, but they also need to be able to pass on that feeling to their child.
Definitely. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for giving us extra time to answer these questions, as well as for the audience member for being so engaged with us, staying with us towards the very end, and proactively asking us these questions. We never have enough time for such juicy topics. This is an ever-going, ever-long discussion, and hopefully, Sheikh, you will bless us with more time, with more upcoming events where we can dig into each of these topics a bit more, because there's so much to talk about with so little time and so many young audiences who keep asking us. So hopefully, inshallah, we'll get more of these questions from our audiences. We really do look forward to answering that. There's a huge team that I'd like to thank from both Sheikh's side as well as for the AKM, without who this event would not be possible. So Jazakallah khair for those volunteers that may not always be in front of the screen, but may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raise your ranks and keep allowing us to move forward. Sheikh, any closing words from your side?
Well, my closing words will be for the young men and women out there who are listening. A person like myself, like they said, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So I can't really learn new things perhaps now. But I like to say that to all those young people and women and men who are out there, those adults, pre-adults, and whatever you like to call them nowadays. And what I'd like to say is that remember that the one that you are really, truly, and only actually answerable to is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So build your relationship at best with Him. And once He comes into the right priority and place, all other things shall fall into place, inshallah, by themselves. If that is the fulcrum and nucleus of your life, Him, His book, and His Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if that is the nucleus of your life, everything else in this world falls into place. So never give up on these three things: your relationship with him, his teachings, his orders, his commandments, and his Nabi's teachings. If these three things are in the right place, inshallah, everything falls in the right place. May Allah bless you all and all our listeners and our viewers. And I hope that this becomes true for not only them, but me also. This advice, I am most needful of all advice, inshallah. I'll be there. I'd also like to put out our email address, and you can route questions and further contact through Taha Ansari or directly through our Facebook and our pages. I'll be looking forward, and I always look forward to helping in any way I can any young man or woman with any question that they might have. They're most welcome.
Jazakumullah khair, Sheikh. Once again, thank you to everyone that dialed in. Can't wait for us to dial in again and inshallah, bring the topics that are near and dear to you, surface them. Really, really blessed in this day and age to utilize such platforms for the better. Like Sheikh mentioned, Sheikh Google. Let's try to bring these wisdoms to Sheikh Google and all these other social media platforms with the right information that helps us move in the right direction. And inshallah ta'ala, we can clarify the misconceptions and the fitna that plagues our youth. And hopefully we can build them to become the leaders of tomorrow. And with that, I will like to thank Sheikh again. I would like to thank the Kitab al-Mubin team and our audiences for dialing in. Till we meet again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.